He is the co-owner and co-director of Co-Pilot Music, the company that provides provides sound design, compositions, sound compositions, sound production, music production, to film, ads, multimedia, gaming, right, and other media platforms. He's a multi-instrumentalist and guitarist in the band that we both play in, and he's an all-around cool guy. Everyone, I'd like to introduce Ravi Krishnaswamy. So Ravi, I'm gonna just dim the lights. If you, I don't know how we want to take it.
Do I need to put the projector on at some point?
Yeah. I'm gonna just fire that up.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dawson.
Cool.
Awesome. You got that.
So, I'm excited to be here. How are you guys doing?
Good.
Good? All right. So, who plays an instrument?
Yeah, this is my guitar class.
Yeah.
Guitar 1, 2, and
That's
3
an easy
class.
I'm starting you with easy questions. Who reads music? Okay. Who has ever recorded music? Okay. A few hands. Who has ever written music? Good. Okay. And who has ever college doing music I started in music for advertising, and that's kind of grown out to other types of music for film, music for video games. I've been doing a lot of work with Bethesda in the last 5 or 10 years, on and off. Who here plays video games? Okay, that's a lot of hands. So there might be some stuff I've worked on. You guys saw the Country Roads thing?
I queued that up yesterday. So yes, in fact, very first time I remember your emails, but also Sam actually played. We had a performance in class on Thursday, Friday, and Sam actually performed "Take Me Home, Country Roads." And I believe was that your reference for the song, or was it John Denver's?
Sort of.
A little bit of both.
A little bit. Yeah.
Okay.
So, so that's kind of like the most recent high-profile thing I've done for media, and doing that trailer. I basically was the arranger on the song, so they knew early on that they wanted to use the song in the trailer. I've worked with them on a lot of different quirky music projects, and came up with the arrangement, and then my partner and I contracted a band in the city. We put it together. It's not a band that plays together. We put it, we got different musicians, studio musicians together, booked a recording studio, brought the clients up from, they are in Maryland, so they came up for the recording session, and then we worked with them a little bit on crafting what was going to happen in the trailer from the song, but there's also a full-length song that they put out on iTunes. So I can, when we kind of get to questions and answers, I can tell you guys more about that process if you want to hear about it. But I figured I'd tell you a little bit about how I got into doing this, since you all are musicians. And maybe are any of you thinking about making music in some form or fashion a career down the road? Raise your hand. Okay, that's cool, because I didn't think so either. You asked me in high school. I applied to engineering schools and went to University of Virginia for electrical engineering, and I was really awesome at math in high school, and then not awesome at math in college when it got to like calculus 3 and derivative equations, and so I kind of shifted my focus to music and English. I never thought it was realistic to have a career in music, and here I am 20 years later. So I want to give you a little bit of my experience doing that. I studied music and English I didn't really study composition in college, but I studied ethnomusicology. And when I asked you if anybody had written about music before, the reason why I asked you that is because I think one of the most important things that trained me for doing this kind of work, music for media, was actually writing about music and talking about it and putting it into words for non-musicians to read. And because my daily routine is working with people on the other side of the phone or the email exchange who are not musicians and don't understand theory or the recording process. And so I have to understand what they come to me with a project and they have something in their head that they're trying to create, and I'm going to help them get there as a composer and a sound designer, but they can't really articulate what it is they want. So it's my job to kind of ask them questions and then tell them what I think they're asking for, and then go and do that, and then understand their feedback. So I didn't really study composition, but when I got out of college, I ended up at a Jingle House, which so the company that creates music for commercials, and I was given an opportunity pretty early on. The reason why I got the opportunity was that I had, on my own time, learned one of the studios, learned how to use all the equipment, and was making my own music in there just for fun, and they saw that I was doing that, so they gave me a shot. Rather than talk for a long time, I figure I'll show some stuff.
Yeah, sounds good.
This is my company's website, and you can see some of the stuff we've worked on. Let me play you. So I thought I would play you. It's kind of boring but fun. It's a bunch of ads for multivitamins that I recently did, and you might see them like if you're watching stuff on YouTube, because they often come up as pre-rolls. And that's one way that the industry has changed, is that I used to write a lot of 30 and 60-second TV commercials, and now I write a lot of 15-second pre-rolls for YouTube and that sort of thing, because that's how people advertise now. But I thought I'd play you this campaign because it's like 5 different short spots, and each one is a completely different style of music, and I wrote all the music and did all the sound design in these. And so I want you to see sort of how much range is required to do this kind of work on a daily basis.
Drop off Anya, pick up Perry, and get to the store by 5. On it. Yes, girls, I'm totally free this Thursday. Tell Kat to call Carla to confirm. Katrina's still coming.
Reminder, call Mom on the way home.
Noted.
Ska. This is not playing right. Let me play it from here. Okay. So that's the first one. That's just ska, and the bass and guitars in that. I played all of that myself. So anytime you heard guitars and basses, I played those instruments. The other instruments are sampled, basically. Although on a lot of projects I do, like Country Roads, we brought in musicians and did everything live. So that's kind of an example of traditional advertising work that I do. And there's a lot that goes in, there's a ton of work that goes into those, that 15 seconds of time in terms of composing the music to tell the story moment to moment, deciding which elements, music or sound design, are going to actually tell the story. In some cases, music plays a bigger role in making you feel a certain moment. In some cases, sound design does. So that's a little introduction. Let's see. I think I told you guys that I studied ethnomusicology in college, and one of the things that has been really fun over the years doing this kind of work is when I have an opportunity to kind of bring that training into my work more. And I had an opportunity last year to do some work with ESPN. I've known the head of music there for a long time and worked on a few projects with them over the years. They came to me because they were looking to launch Sports Center in India and Africa, and they wanted to rearrange the theme music for the show in a way that honored and spoke to local traditions, musical traditions. And it's funny, I mean, but you find this in media. They came to me rather than trying to go find somebody in India or Africa to work on this, because they have a relationship with me and they know that I've studied music from other countries and I can bring in musicians and manage the process. So do you guys want to hear how those turned out? Has anybody, actually I don't know if I have the original Sports Center theme on here, but
I think they know, right?
You guys
know it's the guitar, right? Da-na-na, da-na-na, right? Everyone knows that, right?
you guys have had ESPN on at some point when Sports Center's come up.
Yeah.
Okay, so you'll recognize it. They actually gave me all the different recorded elements from the original theme, and left it up to me whether to replay them or use some of them as recorded. And I did use the signature guitar riff in there because you had to have that in there in order for it to be Sports Center to me. So what do you want to hear first, India or Africa?
Let's do the India. Yeah.
Okay, let's do India first. Actually, there's two arrangements for India. Let's see. We'll just play this one. Oh, sorry. It's loud.
That's okay. The volume over here is a little low, so.
Cool.
qualified to do that one because my dad grew up in India, and we used to have the local access cable network on the weekends, and I'd hear all the Bollywood on Saturday mornings. So I grew up listening to Bollywood, and I brought that into this arrangement. Let me play you Africa now.
Yeah, I think after the Africa one, why don't we open up to questions? And
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Very nice. All right, Robbie. Cool. So now, if you have something to say about that, you can do that now, or we can open up for questions.
I'll say something quick about that.
Okay.
And we can lead into questions. So you guys know I play guitar in a band with Mr. Grotto, or Fredo as I call him in the band. And I'm the guitar player in a Smiths and Morrissey tribute band, and this one was fun for me because as a guitar player, I always remember reading that Johnny Marr's guitar playing early on was compared to South African high life, and I brought a little bit of that playing into the Africa arrangement with that little riff. It's done on like a clean guitar in a very high life style. So I find little opportunities to have my own fun. And also on that arrangement, I had a very funny conversation with a flute player that I'd worked with for years. I said, it's a guy who plays a million different flutes. Anything that is considered a flute that you can Google, he probably owns it and can play it and record it himself. And he also happens to be the pit flute player in The Lion King on Broadway. And so, I forgot that for a moment. I was like, so can you pull off African styles? And he's like, I play in The Lion King. So I had a lot of fun on that one. I had a lot of fun on the India one, working with a sitar player based in Brooklyn, and a tabla player who's also based in Brooklyn. With that, so ask me anything about how I do this and why I do it, how it works.
Sam?
So I'm a bit of a Fallout nerd. What works have you done for Bethesda and that franchise?
So for the Fallout franchise, Fallout's a very significant franchise for me as a composer because it is what got me into working with video games. As I told you guys, I started at a jingle company doing music for advertising, and a friend of mine was at an ad agency in DC that happened to be working with Bethesda on the marketing campaign for Fallout 3. And part of the marketing campaign was they wanted to create these little 50s style TV commercials, and a lot of advertising in the 50s had traditional jingles, like little tunes. So the first gaming thing I worked on was a series of jingles for Fallout 3. Like these are short, so I can play them talking. Like this is my favorite one from this campaign.
All Tech presents growing up. You're growing up. And other things are changing too. You know what that means. Pip-Boy 3000. Part of your life. With Pip-Boy, all life's answers are in sight.
Pip-Boy 3000, part of your life. Pip-Boy 3000, part of your life. With Pip-Boy, all life's answers are in sight. That's right.
So that was the first project I did on Fallout. We did the Nuka World DLC jingle, which is also a vocal jingle. We did some other stuff for the Nuka World release for Fallout 4, like the safety video.
Can I add on to the question? What would you say, or building off that, what would you say the effect of a particular kind of music on a trailer or commercial or anything like that has on it? Like if you put the wrong thing to...
I mean, it is, so Fallout's a great example of the stakes. These are, games that they've spent, a couple years and millions of dollars to develop, and their success, the return on that investment can rest on a successful marketing campaign. And so every detail about the marketing campaign, from the gameplay capture to the music, is thought about a lot. And you know, I'm lucky enough to have this relationship with Bethesda, and they can be very creative and out of the box in how they think about music for trailers. So I think they define themselves in the marketplace by when they do really creative, unique trailers, and not just, you know, because there's a lot of gameplay trailers out there that use trailer tracks, which are, you know, same music you see in big action movie trailers. It's all the same stuff. It's the same low hits and strings, and you've heard it a million times before. So I think having a real memorable, ownable musical asset, and understanding that music can play such an important role in a game's identity is really valuable. So I think for Fallout, you probably know they've used the ink spots a lot, and
I heard built in the sort of what I don't know what it's called. It's the beginning bit into the that the ink spots use a lot into the trailer theme for 76.
Yes, yeah, and in fact, so the idea for the music for the Fallout 76 was just a top-down idea. It was the head of the game studio said, "Country roads. This game is going to take place in Appalachia, West Virginia. This is the song. We want to figure out how we can somehow bring this song together with the Fallout identity, which we built up over many different games using the ink spots." So, in fact, I can play you a little bit of. I have it, like the very first demo for that trailer, because you guys saw the Country Roads trailer yesterday, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. So the very first demo I did for that is almost straight like Country Roads has the ink spots.
Almost heaven,
So you see how it's more
West
strong.
Virginia, Blue Ridge Mountains, Shenandoah River.
So I won't play the whole song, but so there's a lot of other examples I can talk about of music that I've done with Bethesda, where music is not just background music, but it really helps build a world. It helps create equity. Jingles. So if you think about advertising and jingles have been used for years because you can remember music, and you can hear music from another room when it's on the TV and know what it is. So that's why they're so powerful in building awareness around a brand or around a movie or a game. If you're using something unique, people will remember it. So I've done other things with Bethesda that involve creating songs that exist within those worlds. I've done other covers. I did a cover of a Fleetwood Mac song, Gold Dust Woman, for Dishonored 2, and that was a really fun assignment. So does that start to answer that?
Yeah.
And Daisy, you have a question?
Yeah.
I saw the word Tetris earlier. Have you done anything for Tetris?
Yes, I did a remix of the Tetris theme for like an anniversary release a few years ago. Do you guys want to see
Yeah,
that?
you want to play it? And Grace, do you have a question? Yeah, we can after this. Yeah.
Face off against your friends, or take on the world in the ultimate version of Tetris.
I'm following each and every one of you.
Tetris Ultimate, ready for everyone.
So there's a lot of creative problem solving to what I do, and this was like, here's a story, we want to tell it with music, but we also want you to remix the Tetris theme at the same time. And
Awesome.
it's the kind of stuff you do as a composer in this world.
Grace?
So you mentioned that you do like the 15-second YouTube ads. but also like longer ads. Which one is harder to do?
15s are really hard because usually they've compressed the storytelling down to this, so every shot does something, and music works on its own. Music has its own time scale that video editing doesn't. So you can show a lot of different things in a very quick amount of time with video, but with music, you know, to go from an A section to a B section in a measure and a half is next to impossible. So it's a lot of gymnastics of figuring out how to get this idea next to this idea next to this idea and make it sound natural like a piece of music. So I would say the shorter spots are actually harder. It's a good question.
We have a quick one. Anthony?
I have a couple students over at Hall, or a couple classes watching right now, and they were wondering what other games you've worked on in the past.
So I've worked extensively on the Dishonored franchise for Bethesda. I did the announcement trailer for the original Dishonored, and then I did the Fleetwood Mac cover for the second one, and then I did also a set of 6 songs which are performed in the game by non-player characters, which is one of the funnest projects I've ever worked on. It's like I can just show you quickly what it looks like. So you kind of have to like find these characters while you're traveling through the world. So you can see, I knew it was going to be 2 musicians, and we kind of talked about the musical style of this universe, and then they gave me a lot of history and lore, and I was able to write a bunch of songs that you would find in that world performed by street musicians. It was I could talk for hours about that project. I've also done a lot of work with their Wolfenstein franchise. Your teacher played bass on one of those songs for Wolfenstein: The New Order. We partnered with them to create a fictional record label called Neumann Recordings that was the home to about 6 or 8 artists who were also fictional artists that we created in the studio and wrote songs for, and they're all performing rock and roll, like the music that exploded in the 60s, but in an alternate universe where German is the predominant language of culture. So all the songs are in German, and that was a fascinating project. I worked with a lot of singers and lyricists in Germany and Austria to get those songs done. We wrote them in English because the people at the game company don't speak German, so we wanted them to understand the song first as a song emotionally and lyrically, and then translate it to German. So we wrote them in English, translated it then to German, and then recorded them. And those you can find in the game, and they were used in some trailers as well.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Question. Another question. We had a question. James.
You say that you work with like these different studios and different companies. How much influence do they have like in the style of music? Or, like how do they like have like an influence on the tracks performed?
So I often say to people looking to get into music for media, it's a service industry. So my job is to, it's not my project, it's their project. So they often come to me with a real vision creatively for what they want. And a lot of times the way that people who don't have musical training communicate is through references. Pulling songs from other artists and sending them to us and saying, this is kind of what we're thinking. So for example, for that Wolfenstein, where we did all these songs from the 60s, we created artists based on references, like this was going to be kind of the bad boy band like the Rolling Stones, this was going to be more of the pop band like the Beatles. In the vitamin commercials I showed you at the beginning, a lot of those first video edits came with temp music on them. Like the squirrel one came with a piece of classical music on piano, and my job was to write something new that fit the picture better. The last one, where it's the probiotic one, where the person's not feeling well and you see those people in those weird suits, they actually sent that to me with the music from Curb Your Enthusiasm on it. I don't know if anybody knows that show. And they were really, like, they had their heart set on that, and they were really attached to that. And so my job as a composer was not only to understand what they wanted, but to safely guide them to a piece of music that they could use without infringing on the copyright of the music from Curb Your Enthusiasm. So that actually involved bringing in what's called a forensic musicologist at the end of that project to listen to what I had written and make sure that it was distinct from that other piece. So usually they have a pretty strong feeling about what they're looking for.
Cool.
You mentioned like copyrights. How do you do that? Do you copyright your music? And like for the country roads, did you have to get special permission?
Yes, Country Roads, there was a music supervisor involved in that project that cleared the game company obviously paid the songwriters a lot of money to use the song, and then they paid us to create a new master. So whenever you're doing licensing, whenever music is put to visual media, it becomes a special business and legal situation called synchronization, and there's a lot of different rules. So like, you could cover a song and pay a compulsory mechanical license and never have to contact the artist that you covered, and you can go perform those covers like we do. But in the case of synchronization, you always need the permission, and you usually need to compensate the songwriters, and then if you're going to use the master recording, then the owner of the master recording. Is that?
We have one more question. Maybe you could show another clip of something
Sure.
you wanted to. Michael?
I was wondering what drove you to pursue this career path?
Well, it's funny. As I mentioned, I didn't see myself having a career in music. But when I got out of college, I moved to New York, and I actually just simply looked for a job that had music in the description and offered health insurance. And that job happened to be the studio assistant at a jingle house. And when I got there, I started to get the feeling, oh, I could do this. I could play around with this. And I was given a couple of opportunities early on before I even, was old enough to be thinking that seriously about my career. I was probably 21 or 22 when I got my first TV commercial on the air. And I kind of was I think I was talented, but also in the right place at the right time and given an opportunity. And because of that early success, I just kept going from there. So I kind of fell into it, in other words.
All right, Maya, quick one.
Do you prefer to do like little jingles or like little pieces of music, or more like music for like games and stuff?
I have to say, creatively, the most rewarding projects have been some of these larger scale game projects, like writing a set of 6 songs for a video game. Because I can really live in that world for 6 months. I mean, the advertising is very fast paced. It comes in, it comes out, it goes out the door within a week or two, and I don't think about it again. But these longer projects are more creative, and also full-length songs tend to continue to have a life after the project. So for example, we don't own, getting back to your question, we don't own the master for the Country Roads cover because we were paid. They paid us to create it so that they can own it. They paid us well up front. But we've gotten a lot of requests for using that song in other contexts. And we have to pass those on to Bethesda, but it's really nice to see that something that we worked on has a life after its initial creation.
Great. And Dawson, do you have a quick one before we show another video? We have about 5 minutes, so quickly.
Yeah, do you get paid to do YouTube video songs too?
YouTube video songs. What do you mean, like just music?
Like the Marshmallow and the Teddy Bears one?
I don't know those. Were they just little bits, YouTube bits? Does anyone know what YouTube?
Yeah.
I think they're just musical artists that have songs on YouTube.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, no, we are always working on somebody else's project.
How many people work in the company?
There's only 2 of us. My partner handles more of the business side and the client relations, so he has to pick up the phone when the phone rings, and he has to push back when the budget is not good enough for a project. And I get to be more of the creative partner. And then we work with a lot of different freelance composers and musicians and engineers on a project-to-project basis. Because every project, as you heard, the diversity of styles of music that we work on at my company, every project really requires a different team to tackle it. So it's my partner and I are kind of we oversee everything. I write most of the music at the company, particularly the gaming stuff, and then we work with a lot of freelancers on other projects.
All right, let's try one more.
Yeah, you guys want to see one more?
Yeah, we're limited. You guys, we'll have to wrap this up while the bell rings in 6 minutes. So we'll watch one more clip and maybe take a couple more questions, and we might have a question or two as the bell rings, but that'll be it for today. All right.
I'll show you one more. These are some things that we've done recently that you might see like as YouTube pre-rolls for Jolly Ranchers. And actually the music in here is stock music. They create these very quickly, so they don't have time and money to write music, but we do the mixing and the voice acting. So I'm actually the voice of Cherries, and this is the Halloween themed one, so I figured I'd play it for you guys. So those are silly.
Awesome, man. All right. Yes, we basically have just about 4 minutes left. Quick questions for Robbie. Make it quick. Yes, John.
So have you ever thought about, incorporating Indian or classical music into video games?
Well, it would be great if that project came along. It hasn't yet, because it always has to feel right for the game. So for example, I worked on a game called Battle Cry that Bethesda developed. It was a multiplayer, I guess kind of like a Fortnite thing, but a different atmosphere than Fortnite. They discontinued its development, but I wrote the score for the game, the in-game score for that game. And the way that game worked was you joined a team at the beginning of the game. One was sort of English, one was Chinese, and one was Russian. And so I was able to create different versions of the game score depending on which team you were on, that were either had elements of English, elements that made you feel like you were English, Chinese, or Russian. So that project allowed me to go there with other styles of music, but it's always depending on who's calling and what they're looking for. So if a game came and the world seemed like it may relate somehow to India to me and I could work in some instruments, I would, definitely.
Jed?
So how long have you been playing guitar?
I've been playing guitar since I bought one in 8th or 9th grade and just started teaching myself by playing along to records. But I never felt like I was a guitar player. Even after playing gigs, I never felt like I was really a guitar player until I heard something on TV that I played. And I was like, I played that. Like I'm a real guitar player.
All right, I think we have time for Sam, a quick one.
Was there like a certain dystopian or like nationalist factor to the Wolfenstein works because it takes place in a universe where the Nazis won World War II and they kind of have control of the world, and that's quite a bit
so
dystopian.
Is there a dystopian element to the music that we
Yeah.
created? No, we kept the music pretty upbeat, but there were really subtle things we did lyrically that told you you were in this alternate universe. So for example, we did like a Bad Boys tune, like the Stones or Who, except lyrically being bad was actually sort of standing up for your country, not being like a rebel. We did subtle things, like we did a song that kind of reminds me of The Doors. That was very trippy, and trippy is the right word. But the hallucinations described in the lyrics were actually like the mechanical beasts that you would have to fight in the game. Like they have these panzer hounds, which have these red eyes. So the hallucination in the lyrics is about these like hounds with red eyes. So we worked with elements of the game world in the lyrics, but the idea was that they were trying to bring, you know, American youth into their movement through music. It's a dystopian idea, but it didn't manifest in the music being dark.
Yeah. Well, everyone, we have 2 minutes. The bell's going to ring in 1 minute. So please, everyone, thank Robbie for joining us today. And if you have any questions, we have a minute to ask them. You can come on up.